Season of the Deep crafted weapons. Are they worth your time? After many hours of playing this season, I have obtained all the patterns for the Season of the Deep, which today I am here to advise on which ones are worth it to craft. I will be rating them on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being worthless and 10 being a must get. There will be timestamps below so you can jump to any weapon you desire if that's all you're here for. One thing I want to point out about these weapons before we get started is its origin trait, unsated hunger, which is if you have no abilities charged, you have increased reload, handling, and stability. It is great. The only downside is you cannot have any charged abilities or else it has no effect. But when it is in effect, it is almost like a surplus times 2. Also, sub if you like this content. It really does cost you nothing and it helps me out a lot. And if you'd like to see other content like this, let me know. So starting off hot with the first of its kind, the pulse rifle from this season, Different Times. It is a 540 RPM rapid fire frame pulse rifle. This pulse rifle has lower stats than every obtainable pulse rifle except airborne effectiveness. This pulse at base, again, is worse than every other rapid fire pulse that is currently obtainable. Even if you add barrel and mag perks, I did arrowhead break and ricochet on all of them except Horror's Least because it has accurized rounds. It loses the stat battle with all of them except Horror's Least with stability and Darkest Before with aim assist. These are the stats, but you might be asking, what about the traits? Maybe the traits can save this gun. For PvE, honestly, it has a lot going on for it. Being that it is the only one of its kind, a strand pulse, gives it an edge over all the other pulse rifles. And honestly, the traits in the second column are not too bad for PvE. So for the first column, you have Subsistence, Stats for All, Offhand Strike, Invisible Hand, Moving Target, Heating Up, and Outlaw. For PvE, the only ones I would be mentioning are Stats for All and Outlaw. For PvP, I would say Moving Target or Heating Up. Now, the second column, you got Adrenaline Junkie, Focus Fury, Collective Action, Multi-Kill Clip, Golden Tricorn, Head Seeker, and Hatchling. Now for PvE traits, I would be looking out for our Adrenaline Junkie, Collective Action, Golden Tricorn, and Hatchling. Now for PvP, there's only really one that really stands out above the rest traits for PvP, and that's Head Seeker. Head Seeker is just too good to not rate as the top go-to in the second column. And honestly, for PvP, all are good, but I would maybe stray away from Focus Fury unless you're cracked out of your mind with your aim. If you are, go for it, but it's really hard, I would say, for the average player to keep it on target to actually take advantage of Focus Fury. So good PvE combos to craft this with would be Stats for All Adrenaline Junkie, Stats for All Collective Actions, Stats for All Golden Tricorn, Stats for All Hatchling, or maybe Outlaw if you like Outlaw. And the reason why I say Stats for All is because Stats for All gives you such a boost to your stats, as in the name, that it's really easy to proc. It doesn't require a kill, and it increases your reload speed, your handling, and stability for not much effort. And realistically, like I said, a lot is going on with this pulse because it is strand and it offers a lot of damage perks in the second column, which makes it a workhorse of a weapon in PvE. Now PvP combos, there's not too many. I would only be looking at Moving Target and Heating Up in the first column and Head Seeker in the second column. They're solid options with really no competitors on this weapon. Maybe some other ones to look out for would be Outlaw Multi-Kill Clip, maybe for 6s, or Heating Up Golden Tricorn again for 6s. Those last two combos are going to be kind of hard to pull off in 3s, so that's really up to you. And the only reason I don't say Collective Action is because in PvP, it is getting a 10% nerf this next week, so it's losing a lot of its power and it requires a lot of setup before you can even take advantage of it, and the payout really isn't that good on a rapid fire frame pulse rifle. Heating Up Head Seeker is really good because it offers additional stability and damage without a kill. You have this from the get-go. Head Seeker just helps a lot with the forgiveness of this weapon, and then Heating Up helps a lot after you get the kill. You get rewarded for a very large bonus to stability. And in PvE, again, this weapon excels for damage perks, and it being strand, there is no comparing. There's no pulse rifle that even comes close to the potential of this weapon in PvE. But in PvP, I say it falls behind all the other rapid fire frames, especially when something like Autumn Wind exists. Autumn Wind is also pretty easy to get. All you have to do is play Crucible, get engrams, and decrypt them at shacks. Autumn Wind has 12 perks in each column, and overall has better stats. Also, Autumn Wind has every perk that Different Times has, except Hatchling, Collective Action, and Golden Tricord. But there's so many perks to choose from, there's really no comparison. And the stat difference, there's really no comparison. So for a PvE rating, I will give it an 8 out of 10 because of strand synergy and the build potential of this weapon. For PvP, I will give it a 3 out of 10. You might be like, well, it has killer perks. Why would you not try to do it? Just because Autumn Wind just objectively is better. It has better stats, and it gets all the good PvP perks that are on this weapon. Plus, it has something like Rangefinder, which currently gives a bonus to range, and on a rapid fire frame, this is really good because range is the thing that rapid fire frames struggle with, at least in the Pulse family, because they shoot so fast. So an overall score is a 6 out of 10. It could be worth it if you like to use strand builds and things like that, but for PvP, I wouldn't say that it's worth it at all unless you really like the weapon. Now on to our second weapon, the hand cannon, the targeted redaction. This is a 120 RPM aggressive frame hand cannon, and realistically this hand cannon does not have much competition for what it does. There are 4 total other energy hand cannons in this archetype. One is unobtainable, which is the Igneous Hammer. Well, I'd say 2 is technically unobtainable because the other one's bottom dollar. It's from Gambit, so it's all you gotta do is play Gambit to get the second one of those other ones. It really only has 3 hand cannons to compete with it, and again, 1 is unobtainable. So realistically, it should rate pretty high then, right? We'll see. At base, it is worse than all the others except combined action in the most important stats, range and handling. So let's count that hand cannon out. We're just gonna count combined action out because it loses on the most important stats of range and handling. One thing it does have going for it is its recoil direction is best in slot with 99 at base. And I will say, this hand cannon feels real nice to shoot. It is very crispy and smooth. It doesn't have a lot of the flaring left to right like a lot of the other 120s do. But with barrels, bottom dollar is just better. The only thing targeted has going for it is enhanced traits. What are those enhanced traits? So for the first column, you have well-rounded, triple tap, outlaw, invisible hand, envious assassin, shot swap, and perfect float. Now for PvE, the only ones that I would say to look out for are maybe well-rounded, outlaw, and envious assassin, maybe triple tap, but I wouldn't count on it. In PvP, the only thing that's any decent at PvP would maybe be outlaw and shot swap. It really doesn't have a good first column perk for PvP. You could also maybe throw well-rounded in there, but don't take it as gospel that that's what you need. Now we come to the second column. We have keep away, collective action, destabilizing rounds, focus fury, explosive payload, harmony, and frenzy. Now for PvE, the ones I'd look out for are explosive payload and frenzy. They're really the only 2 that I could see you using in PvE. Explosive payload because it increases your damage, and frenzy because it increases your damage, reload speed, and handling. You might be like, well, it gets destabilizing rounds. It should be really good. Destabilizing rounds are really bad, especially on primaries. They do not do well. I think for destabilizing rounds to be any good, it needs a massive buff. It just does not do what it needs to do for a primary. Now for PvP, keep away, always a solid perk, or explosive payload if you like explosive payload hand cannons. But I would say keep away is probably the one to look out for. Now again, PvE combos, well-rounded in explosive payload, well-rounded in frenzy, outlaw explosive payload, or outlaw frenzy. Realistically, there's not a lot of great perks for PvE. And PvP combos, you got well-rounded keep away, well-rounded explosive payload, you got shot swap keep away, and shot swap explosive payload. 120 suck in PvE. So as far as 120 void hand cannons go, bottom dollar is better. It gets better perks. It performs better. But I still wouldn't use a 120 in PvE. You could literally put any other weapon on and you do better in PvE. So PvP, the bottom dollar is just objectively better. It has more range at base, and it has 12 perks in each column. So there are so many more combos that are better for it. And the only downside is you have to play Gambit to get it, but if you can get past that, it is a better hand cannon in every aspect. So to the ratings. The PvE rating, I would rate this hand cannon a 2 out of 10. And again, it is because it's a 120 hand cannon. And like I said, you could replace it with any other gun and your build will be 100% better. Not even joking. 120 hand cannons are just complete garbage in PvE. Now for PvP, Even though the bottom dollar is better in almost every way, targeted redacted is still craftable. So it can be what you want, how you want it. Even though there's not really a lot of ideal perks on it, you can still pick and choose what you want on it. The bottom dollar takes a lot of grinding for. You gotta play a lot of Gambit, and you might not even get the bottom dollar you want. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt. So the overall rating for this is a 4 out of 10. It is niche for most and not worth the effort of acquiring, I don't think. You could play Destiny for 10,000 hours and not ever need this weapon. On to the shotgun until its return. Now I'm gonna get off the get-go. I really personally like this shotgun, but that could just be preference. So let's get into it. It has 140 rounds per minute rapid fire shotgun. And realistically, the shotgun has one competitor in the kinetic slot, which is the One Small Step from the moon, which overall it is better than One Small Step, but because One Small Step is in the kinetic slot, it does do more damage. But on the other hand, until its return is Strand. So there is some synergy there and has some build potential, right? Because it's the first Strand shotgun. So what traits is going to make me want to use this over this kinetic shotgun? So in the first column, you got well-rounded, overflow, ensemble, autoloading, threat detector, perfect float, and steady hands. For PvE traits, I would be looking for overflow, autoloading, or threat detector. If you're going to craft that, those are the ones that I would craft it with. Now for PvP, again, overflow. And you might be like, why overflow? Well, when you pick up special ammo, it's just going to load directly into your gun. And you're never not going to have more than what the overflow will load. So you're never going to have to worry about loading your shotgun. Or threat detector. And the reason because the threat detector is it gives a huge bonus to handling and reload speed. So if you're looking for that, it would also be good. So in the second column, we have collective action, trench barrel, harmony, cascade point, surrounded, adrenaline junkie, and vorpal. The perks I would look out for PvE would be trench barrel, cascade point, or surrounded, and maybe vorpal. Trench barrel because it does a lot of damage. Cascade point if you want to be a mini fourth horseman. Surrounded because it's a huge damage boost. Now for PvP, you're not looking at too much. Like, there's not a whole lot. You could maybe go for trench barrel or surrounded or even vorpal. Those are the only ones that I would ever even think about putting on it, because the rest are kind of trash for PvP. So combos for PvE would be overflow trench barrel, overflow cascade point, overflow surrounded, or autoloading trench barrel, autoloading cascade point, or autoloading surrounded. Or you go threat detector trench barrel, threat detector cascade point, or threat detector surrounded. Now for PvP, you can kind of just push all of the PvE recommendeds to the PvP side because they all would work. Theoretically, it'd be kind of your feel if you're honestly thinking about using this in PvP. And this shotgun is for those who want to blow their whole reserves in a matter of seconds. And like I said, it's basically a baby fourth horseman. And honestly, with some good perk combos if you want to use this in PvE. And like I said, I actually like this in PvE. It kind of shreds in PvE. In PvP, it's a shotgun. Rapid fire frames are probably the worst in PvP, or at least the least used, and that's usually because they have poor range, and this one's no exception. Now the ratings, PvE, I would rate this 9 out of 10. It is a solid shotgun in PvE, not only for strand builds, but if you have places where you have to do DPS at short ranges, and you already have your exotic slot used, it is a solid option. For PvP, 4 out of 10. It is a shotgun. Like I said, it does everything that most shotguns do, but I find it is very inconsistent compared to its aggressive and precision frame brothers. So overall rating, about a 7 out of 10. It's good. I like it. I think if you want to use it in PvE is something to chase after, but if you're not looking to use it in PvE, then I would not even worry about it. I have seen people use more rapid fire frames, but honestly, you'd be better going and grinding out for a Matador or getting the red borders for Imperial Decree than using this. Now, on to the submachine gun. The Rapacious Appetite. I don't know how you say that, but the stasis submachine gun. And so, did you guys ask for a second Immortal, or did you ask for a reiteration of our third stasis submachine gun that is craftable, which is the same archetype as the last one that came out? No, neither did I. So this is a 750 RPM aggressive frame SMG. This is a stasis SMG, and it has 4 competitors for its slot. I think one of them is unobtainable, that is the Blood Feud. And if it is obtainable, let me know in the comments. And the other two are Extraordinary Rendition and Cold Front. They don't come around very often. And last but not least, definitely not least, is Immortal, which comes from Trials of Osiris. So it is unique in that this type of weapon is hard to get. There's not very many like it. So right off the rip, this SMG has solid stats with the highest range of any of its competitors. Other than that, it lacks in most other areas compared to its competitors, especially with the stability. It has the lowest stability in slot, but honestly, the stats are not too far off from the others, except Immortal, which by the way is a stat monster, so it's really almost unfair to compare it. But what is comparable to this SMG is Blood Feud, which is another stasis SMG from the Season of the Plunder. And they have minor stat differences and some trait differences, but at least for PvE, they perform in the same manner. And if you want to look at the differences, here's a link to this SMG and then to Blood Feud. And the main difference between these two is that you cannot obtain, to my knowledge, Blood Feud anymore. But realistically, what is the main reason you would use a stasis SMG in PvE? You'd use it for headstone generally. So what traits make this gun unique? So in the first column, you get an Envious Assassin, Well-Rounded, Offhand Strike, Perpetual Motion, 4 times a Charm, Invisible Hand, and Encore. For PvE, there's only two that I would really look at for PvE, and that's Perpetual Motion and 4 times a Charm. Really not wowing, nothing special about it. Now for PvP, Perpetual Motion and Encore. Encore more of a 6s thing. I mean, even in 3s it could be really good because you get the bonus to range and stability no matter what if you get a kill. So it's a very desirable thing. Now in column 2, you got One for All, Headstone, Focus Fury, Harmony, Target Lock, Cascade Point, and Frenzy. For PvE, Headstone obviously, Target Lock, and Frenzy. Those are all ones that I would maybe craft this with. And the only one for PvP would be Target Lock. The rest really don't do anything for you. I guess I could see the play for Focus Fury or Cascade Point, but Focus Fury requires you to hit half of your mag in the head, and I can think that most players are probably not going to be doing that on a consistent basis, so it's better to get Target Lock, which gives you a damage boost and not requiring you to hit all headshots. So the perk combos would be for PvE, Perpetual Motion, Headstone, Perpetual Motion, Target Lock, or Perpetual Motion, Frenzy, maybe 4 times a Charm, Headstone, 4 times a Charm, Target Lock, and 4 times a Charm, Frenzy. The only reason I say 4 times a Charm is because the problem with aggressive frame SMGs is they just don't have a lot of ammo in the magazine. You can find yourself reloading a lot, so 4 times a Charm might mitigate some of that reloading. And for PvP, there's only 2 combos I'd really look out for, which would be Perpetual Motion Target Lock or Encore Target Lock. And in reality, this SMG in PvE is for those that want a stasis SMG but don't want to use Forensic Nightmare. Other than that, I don't see much of a reason why to use this in PvE unless you really like it. It doesn't have anything crazy going trait-wise, the stats aren't insane, and if you're not using stasis, why not use a kinetic or an Immortal, which is just objectively better? And the only reason I say kinetic is because kinetics, they deal more damage than elemental type SMGs, or use an element that matches your subclass if you're not using stasis. So for PvE, I would say it's an 8 out of 10, based purely off the fact that it is one of 3 stasis SMGs, with one, as we have acknowledged, is unobtainable. And who wants to use Forensic Nightmare? I'm sorry if you like it. It feels horrible to me. It's just not a fun gun to use. It shoots too slow. And then for PvP, I rated a 7 out of 10, based purely off the fact that the stats are similar to the Immortal. And if you do not have an Immortal, then this is a good alternative. Otherwise, the Immortal is just better. So the overall score is a 7 out of 10. Something to have if you don't have a stasis SMG, and it does feel good. It is a solid SMG. And if you're looking for something for that PvE stasis loadout, go and get it. Or if you're looking for a budget Immortal, it is for you, because that's realistically what it is. It's just a budget Immortal. On to the sniper rifle, a Distant Pull. It's a great name, by the way. I actually really like that name. It is a 140 RPM rapid fire frame sniper rifle. And rapid fire frame sniper rifles, as most people probably don't know, is probably the highest burst damage weapon in the game. And remember, snipers got buffed by 10% this season. So if you want something that causes a lot of damage real quick, rapid fire frames are really, really good. But as we get started, the stats of this sniper is nothing to write home about. In fact, it sits lower than all the rapid fire frames in this slot. Plus, with it being stasis, this sniper is doing less than its kinetic counterparts such as the Supremacy or Precipice Revenge. And I really find it hard to rate this one high. The only redeeming thing is that if it is stasis, so pairing it with a stasis heavy to take advantage of surge mods for boss DPS would be the only reason to run this over the Supremacy or Precipice Revenge. But honestly, if that's your reasoning for running it, I will point you to an even better rapid fire frame sniper rifle that is also stasis, Uruk Ondi. It is the same archetype, but this sniper has Vice Stinger, which after landing damage has a chance to return ammo to the mag, which makes it better overall. And the fact it rolls with 4 times the charm and firing line or focus fury, it is objectively better for boss DPS. But is there any traits that maybe could make it good? So in column 1 we have Ensemble, Keep Away, Overflow, Tunnel Vision, Ambitious Assassin, Moving Target, or Triple Tap. Not a lot to choose from. So for PvE, Overflow or Triple Tap, those would be the only ones that I would ever craft this with. And for PvP, I would go Overflow again, because you don't have to reload it if you walk over ammo, or Moving Target. Really not much to write home about in that first column. And then in column 2, we have Collective Action, Headstone, Killing Wind, Opening Shot, Explosive Payload, Focus Fury, or Discord. For PvE, Collective Action might be good, could be decent, or Focus Fury. Those are the only 2 that I would ever consider crafting it with, and the only one for PvP would be Opening Shot. And as you notice, for PvP it does not roll its snapshot, so for most people this is just going to be an automatic no. If you do not like snipers without snapshot, this sniper is just a no for you. Honestly, if you really want a good stasis sniper rifle, the Thoughtless is better than this one and rolls with better like boss damage perks. This one is easier to get, but if you already have a Thoughtless, then there's no reason to craft this. But good possible trait combinations would be Overflow, Collective Action. This is for PvE, by the way. Overflow, Focus Fury, Triple Tap, Collective Action, or Triple Tap, Focus Fury. Now for PvP, I can only see Overflow plus Opening Shot or Moving Target plus Opening Shot. These are probably the best combos for this weapon, which are not too bad for PvE, but for PvP it is lacking. Like I said, it doesn't not roll with snapshot. So for 70 to 80% of the PvP players, it's going to be an automatic no. And definitely would not be a weapon I would craft for PvP. And even in PvE, why not just use a kinetic one like Precipice Revenge or Supremacy? Because their trait pool, rewind rounds and 4 times the charm and Vorpal, and they roll with so much better perks. So a PvE rating, I give this a 2 out of 10. I would not craft it. A PvP rating, a 3 out of 10. I would not craft it. An overall score, 3 out of 10. I would not spend your time on crafting it unless you really want the sniper. It doesn't offer anything special for the slot. Other snipers just perform better. If anything, I would recommend going farming Last Wish for Supremacy because it is way better. And finally, the sword. Thin Precipice. This sword is very unique and I personally like it, but swords are swords, so take it or leave it. This is a vortex frame sword, so this means when you use a heavy attack, you are going to spin around and you damage everything in a radius around you. And realistically, this has 4 competitors in the same slot, and I am not counting unobtainable or class specific swords such as the warlock specific swords. So what are those competitors? We have Hero of Ages, Falling Guillotine, and Razor's Edge, but the main difference is that it is the only strand sword in the game. So alone, a decent reason to go and get it. But other than that, what does it have going for it? In column 1, we have Duelist Trance, Relentless Strikes, Flash Counter, Valiant Charge, Steady Hands, Tireless Blade, and Unrelenting. For PvE, I would say Valiant Charge and Unrelenting are the only 2 I would be looking at. Valiant Charge is actually a cool perk on this sword, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Now for PvP, Valiant Charge is the only perk that I would recommend getting. You could maybe make a play with Unrelenting, but if you're using a sword in PvP, you gotta question your mental sanity. In the second column, you got Harmony, Counterattack, Adrenaline Junkie, Collective Action, Golden Tricorn, Chain Reaction, and Hatchling. Now for PvE, you could make a play for like golden tricorn, but I would say the best would be chain reaction and hatchling, probably more likely chain reaction. And for PvP, I would still say chain reaction. Again, if you are using a sword in PvP, you gotta check your mental health. Or trait combos for this would be valiant chain reaction, valiant hatchling, or unrelenting chain reaction, or unrelenting hatchling. And for PvP, the only combo I would do is valiant plus chain reaction. Now this sword is in a unique position that it has a perk setup that only one other sword in the game shares with it, and that is the hunter specific sword from last season, the Golden Tusk, which is where Valiant Charge is in the first column. So it allows you to have Valiant Charge on a sword while also having a damage perk. But the major pitfall of swords until they get changed is that most bosses and enemies in the game have stomp mechanics or deal way too much damage to be running around with any sword other than Lament. But if there wasn't talk, and by talk, I mean being expressed in the TWAB, or as Bungie has renamed it, the TWID, I would say don't bother with the sword. The thing that they're talking about is reworking swords. I don't know what the rework will be, but they have mentioned it in the TWAB. So if a rework is in the works, then I will say pick it up, because swords are few and far between, and having one on backup is always useful. Now for PvE rating, I would rate this a 7 out of 10. And it's really only off of the rework. If the rework is good, then hooray, you saved a good sword for when swords are probably going to be really good. But realistically, right now, the only place you can really use swords is in lower end content. But I will say swords are fun in lower end content. You just run around, keep swinging, and kill everything with it. So it is an enjoyable experience. In PvP, I would rate it a 3 out of 10. Don't pick it up if you only play PvP. Swords are bad in PvP unless it has eager edge. Even then, it isn't used for the heavy ammo. It is used for movement. It just isn't worth the grind for red borders if the only place you play is PvP. So the overall score is 5 out of 10. Worth picking up if you like swords, but if you don't, you're really not missing much. So, in conclusion, we will go through the ratings again. For the rapid fire frame pulse rifle, the different times was a rating of 6 out of 10. Good for people who want to make builds with Strand, really not worth it otherwise. Targeted redaction, 4 out of 10. Nothing special, not worth it if you don't like 120s in PvP. Again, it really doesn't have anything going for it. Until its return, the shotgun, a 7 out of 10. Super fun in PvE. It's good for Strand. For PvP, really not worth it unless you like rapid fire frames. But I'd say it is a decent pickup if you like rapid fire frames in PvE. And for personal experience, I would say this is probably the one weapon that I really like out of this season. So take it or leave it. Now we got the SMG, the Rapacious Appetite. I'd rate it a 7 out of 10. It basically is a budget immortal. So PvP fiends, there you go. Good for those also who like stasis builds. You know, if you need an SMG for stasis builds and you don't want to use the Forensic Nightmare, this is a good alternative. It is better than the Forensic Nightmare, or at least it feels better than the Forensic Nightmare. For the rapid fire frame sniper rifle, a distance pull, I would say it's a 3 out of 10. It is not worth it at all, and no content. And this leads me to the point of, why are there elemental affinities in the kinetic slot? The only reason I say this is because any instance where there's a special weapon in the kinetic slot, it is always going to be beat out by the kinetic weapons, because the kinetic weapons just inherently do more damage, unless you get something that has like some crazy perk combo. This kind of a sniper will pretty much always be beat out unless something crazy changes. I just don't understand. I know they wanted to make kinetic weapons more relevant, but it kind of pushed Strand and stasis weapons out of relevancy unless they have some insane perks for PvP. So please, Bungie, fix this conundrum, because honestly, this is a huge amount of weapons, especially newer weapons that are coming out that are just not good compared to their kinetic counterparts. Now on to the sword, the Vortex Frame sword. Thin Precipice, I will give it a 5 out of 10. It's fun, it's unique. I would chase it, but if you don't like swords and play PvP, mostly, it's not worth it. So this has been a video on the craftable weapons of Season of the Deep. Overall, there really isn't anything to write home about except the shotgun, I will write home about the shotgun. I like the shotgun. For you personally, though, if you don't want to, there's no need to run and get any of these things anytime soon. You don't have to worry about FOMO on this one. But if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps me out and it doesn't cost you anything. And I really want to thank you for your time. If you want to, you could always check me out at twitch.tv/greatsquatch. I'm live most days. I'm always helping people with raids and dungeons and any content in the game you need help with. Just swing on by and ask. Don't be afraid. Thank you.